Meet Criselda Yabes, our inspiration author for the month of September. Let us follow her journey, where peace and order are found in literature, in her masterpiece, Crying Mountain.
They say the mountain cries with you when you depart the shores of Sulu, and so too when you return. From the roof terrace, the days of expectations were woven into the silky ripples of the sea. There were days when, looking at the mountain, the fog hovering the slopes cast a pall of gray which could make the heart suffer. Other days, the deep purple lines that slashed on the horizon could give you the courage to dare heaven. But one thing was clear: the mountain stayed. For as long as its wide slants laid like tender arms on the backdrop of the wharf, the story of love did not end. The main reason kung bakit ko nasulat yon, why I wrote all these books, mainly because of my childhood. I wasn't born in the South. I was born in Quezon City, but my father moved to the South because he was assigned, his job brought him there. So first we were in Holo, Sulu, and then we lived in Zamboanga. At that time, if you're from Manila and you talk about Holo and you talk about Zamboanga, it's like, it's a place that's so far away. You don't know the people, and you talk about Muslims. Generally, people from the north were afraid of the Muslims because of the image that they had. These were pirates, these were kidnappers, these were violent people. But my experience as a child, when we moved to Holo, I was just siguro in the first grade or even before that, it was completely different. So we were in this small, beautiful island where every weekend we would go swimming at any of the beaches that we want, because of course it's an island, so it's surrounded by beaches, but they were all white sand and everything was so pristine and everything was just gorgeous and beautiful. And we looked forward to weekends. I didn't see the Muslims that I met, my classmates, my father's friends, were all very nice. And in fact, the groups, the families, the Christian families and the Muslim families were always would get together. They would have parties. The way we see Muslims now because of Islamism and all that, it wasn't like that before. The veils that the women wore were really beautiful veils, hindi yung naka-cover talaga, and may beads pa sila, and ang gandang tignan when they would wear it. They would have parties together. So if it's Christmas, the Muslim families would join the Christian families, and when it's after Ramadan, Hari Raya, the Christians would join the Muslims. So there was a lot of harmony. But of course, at that age, I had no idea what was going on, the conflict and everything. Because it was just once, a couple of times that I remember we had to leave school because there was some shooting. I think that was the only time I was aware of what the problem really was. We were in the school and we were all told we had to leave, there was shooting and all that. And I remember I was with my sister and we were hiding in an alcove and we had to wait. And I remember the fear that I had walking from the school to the house. That's just the background I wanted to give about what Mindanao was to us. And little by little, I discovered that there were more people from Holo coming, and it was only years and years later that I discovered that this uprising was very critical in the history of the Muslim people. So there is that child in me trying to bring back, recreate my childhood. And at the same time, the journalist side of me, which had to cover the military and this conflict. So bit by bit, I was trying to unravel the stories. Crying Mountain is Bud Tumatanggis in Holo. So it's like when you arrive in Holo or when you leave, it's the first thing that you see and the last thing that you see. It's that mountain kind of like overlooking the lives of these people, the history of this place. Originally, the original title was Below the Crying Mountain, but I shortened it to Crying Mountain when it was republished a few years ago because it's a love story. So ang setting nga niya yung uprising sa Holo. But I was showing that, that the Muslims and the Christians were together before all of this happened. And the love story also showed, I mean, it was also a love story between Christian and Muslims, but two love stories you had put together. Why did I do that? First of all, when I was doing research, I wanted to revive the stories of the uprising, how the uprising really happened. Because when the uprising happened in the news, remember this was martial law, there was no news, everything was censored. After that, very few wrote about it. There was hardly any stories or books written about the Holo uprising in Holo of 1974. Because I was covering the military, one of the officers gave me a classified document na diniclassify at that time. Tapos doon ko nakita yung chain of events, how it happened. So I said, my gosh, I have to do this. I have to kind of revive this too. I have to get stories from people who were there. But not realizing that when I got there, when I decided to stay in Holo, I think maybe for 2 or 3 months, most of the families were gone. Kakonti na lang yung nakakausap ko. And the few that I would talk to were like, oh, I don't want to remember that. And they were just talking about, their lost love and this girl and that girl and, the movies they used to watch and how the port used to look like, So to me, it became a romanticized thing again. I was there for 3 months. The place was really, I mean, there were like kidnappings and, I couldn't really walk the street that much, although I tried to. Again, the juxtaposition of that were people telling me how beautiful it was. It was the same feeling I was having. So I decided that I would write that story, yung love stories in the time of the uprising. Parang ganon. Also to show that, hey, you know, there's a Christian soldier who fell in love with a young Muslim girl. Hey, there's a girl from Zamboanga who left her family and eloped with the Muslim leader who was going to run the uprising without her knowing about it. So it was like saying they were okay. They were good together. There was harmony together, but at the same time, it was the conflict that broke them apart. That's it. I was trying to thresh out these things, diba? Like, why was there this conflict between two religious groups? But when I was there, I didn't feel it. But I saw it happening when we moved to Zamboanga. And I don't know, it's a matter of threshing out so many issues. But in the end, I think it's maybe how I felt the place. I felt about the place made me want to write more about it. I think also because I knew Holo as a place that was more like a paradise of our childhood, that somehow at the back of my head as a writer, I wanted to bring it back. By writing, it would become a paradise again. By writing about it, what it was like before, it would come back. With the Battle of Marawi, for instance, I was able to get the story from the officers whom I knew when they were just lieutenants after the EDSA revolt. They were even jailed. And then years, this is like what, 20, 30 years later, they become commanders in this battle. Everything was leading to that, and I wasn't even aware of it. It was only when I finished this book when I said, eto na yon. You know, I'm closing a circle for myself, as a journalist. Yeah. You follow the story that's given to you. I mean, like I said, I didn't wake up one morning and just said, I'm going to have to write about this, or this is, I'll follow this story. It was there. It was making me dig up this story. It was giving me the situations, basically it's like serendipity na parang eto yon, may storya dito.